Welcome, everybody. It's Analena here for another episode of the Art of Slowing Down podcast. And it's going to be another solo episode. And you guys can probably hear I sound a little bit stuffy. I am recovering from a little virus, but I'm already much better. And I was thinking about skipping an episode, but I waited, and then I was like, okay, it's supposed to be, and this is actually something that's very fun for me. So here we go. So I wanted to talk about the current transit. And this is something we talk a lot about in human design and also the gene keys. And I want to actually talk about what we call programming partners in the gene keys. I think in human design, we don't talk too much about it. And hence you will also see again why I love so much the combination of human design and the gene keys. Because sometimes for me, there are a couple of things missing, so to say, in human design. So we will dive into the current Sun and Earth transit. So currently the Sun is in gate 5 and the Earth is in gate 35. So let's look at that a little bit further and see what that actually means for us. So as you can see here, if you're watching here on YouTube, obviously, if not, if you're listening on the regular podcast, you can jump over to YouTube, or you can envision that I'm talking about gate 5. That gate comes off the sacral center. And so it's a responsive energy. So as we're responding to life, to basically what lights us up, what brings us joy. And so gate 5 is called the gate of patterns in human design. In the traditional I Ching, it's called waiting. And in quantum human design, it's actually called consistency. And then in the gene keys, we always have a shadow, a gift, and a city. And so the shadow is basically the lower expression, which is called impatience, and the gift is patience, and the city is timelessness. So let's talk about this a little bit. I love the gene keys because oftentimes I find that when people think about gate 5, especially if they have this gate defined in their charts, that they have to be consistent. And I mean, consistency is such a huge topic. I personally recorded a whole podcast episode about consistency because, especially as a manifesting generator, I mean, we can talk all day long about consistency, what that actually means. And the big important thing here is that consistency can change, right? Consistency does not mean, and this is also not how it's meant in human design either, right? It's meant your natural consistency as you go with the flow of life. Just as nature, if you think about the seasons, we have, especially if, like, I'm from Germany, like, I think there it's most significant. You have like winter, then spring, summer, and fall. And that happens consistently over and over and over again. But within those seasons, there's change, right? And I think we live in a world sometimes where we can misunderstand consistency a lot, where we feel like we have to have this certain routine in order to be too successful or even to be like a normal human. And I have learned that consistency can really mean everything and nothing. And for me in particular, from my own experience, consistency is about having a consistent vision, I want to say, in my business. Like, I really want to bring the wisdom of human design and gene keys out into the world. I want to help people live their most authentic life, especially conscious introvert leaders, highly sensitive people. That's who I am. That's what really lights me up. That's who I attract. And so that's a consistent vision, but how I do that changes a lot. Right now, I'm talking here on the podcast, and as you know, I've been pretty damn consistent, right? Even though sometimes I don't feel like it or something comes up, life still pulls me into that consistency. And so I've been doing this for almost 2 years now. But before that, I didn't have a podcast, right? And then I have an email newsletter. Then I started my YouTube channel recently again, but I didn't do it for another while, right? So I could call myself also really inconsistent. But if I have a positive attitude, I allow myself to be consistent in a way that actually allows a lot of change. And one thing that is so important here, and we're going to go to this other gate in just a little bit, but the Earth gate, so anytime the sun is in a particular gate, the Earth is going to be in a different gate. And we call this the programming partner. So in the Gene Keys is something we actually talk about this. A programming partner is basically, if you think about a coin, on one side of the coin, you have gate 5, and on the other side of the coin, you would have gate 35, which means the coin can only exist with both of these energies. And to fully understand gate 5, we also want to look at gate 35. So I'm actually going to flip over here right now to gate 35. So gate 35 is called the gate of change in human design, and quantum human design is called experience. So that tells us we can actually only be consistent when we also embrace change. Yeah, or we can only have patterns when there's also change, because also patterns consistently change. And for me, that insight was very profound because, again, I remember especially in the beginning of my self-development journey, I often thought that I have to have certain, especially routines, like a 5 a.m. morning routine, or I mean, there can be so many things in how I start my day in my business. I have to have this planner, and I have to totally organize every single day how I do things. I have to block schedule. And so many times it just felt so off because I felt like I have no room to breathe. I cannot really change within that. And I guess I took it too much to the T, but it was human design. And then also obviously the Gene Keys that really helped me to see how, I can be consistent, but I can still have a lot of flexibility, and I can have a lot of change. And I love that. So for you right now, I would love to hear from you. What is something that, or like a pattern in your life that you would like to be more consistent with? And again, the consistency here doesn't mean to be rigid and forceful in any way or form. Key is, because this is, again, it's a sacral gate. It comes off the sacral center. If you have the sacral defined or not, it's a responsive energy. So this means something that comes to you. How is your body responding to that? Does that light you up? Does that bring you joy? And also know in the beginning, if you start a new habit, even though it lights you up, it may still be hard. We just came out of the transit of gate 9, and gate 9 is like we can be in this inertia in the shadow where we're not moving at all. And we need a little bit of willpower to finally get the new thing started. And then eventually, once we're in it, it starts to flow more, right? So that's a little bit about gate 5. And also what I want to say is that I always love to look at the Gene Keys as well, because they provide even more depth. And it's very interesting because the Gene Keys don't really mention consistency so much. The main theme here is really patience. So the shadow of the 5th Gene Key is impatience, right? Where we don't trust the natural flow of life. We don't trust the seasons. It's like, think about it. If, for example, it's summer right now and we want to have it to be winter and we want to make it happen, yeah, you may go to the store and buy all the ice cubes and take an ice bath, but that's going to melt pretty quickly, right? And it's going to be very hard to keep the cold up. Or, yeah, we run the AC all day long to keep it cold while it's hot. So it's not natural in some way. And also, if you think about the seasons in business, right? So I have been an entrepreneur like for over 5 years, and there have been times where everything flows and it's easy and the money flows. And then there were other times where things really slowed down and I started to question things, and I was like, okay, what's going to happen? Am I on the right path? And every single time when I allowed myself to surrender into this slowing down that life almost forced me into, right? It was naturally meant to slow down for me, that it gave me this time to calibrate to even more alignment, so to say, because when I slow down every time, and obviously in the podcast, this is a huge theme. I have been talking about this for 2 years now, that I got so much more clarity on what feels true to me. What are some things maybe in my business that no longer light me up, but I was still doing them kind of on autopilot because I thought I have to do them. And as I surrendered into this kind of void space and I was patient, every single time, seriously, something new, something beautiful came out of it. I got more clarity on who my ideal client is, or I kind of up-leveled on the quality of clients that I want to attract, or I finally allowed myself to launch a completely new product or dive into a whole new direction that I was questioning myself first, because I surrendered into the patience and I trusted that life is slowing me down for the reason. So really, patience, I think this is kind of the key component here. Patience is not so much about waiting, because you can wait in a patient way and in an impatient way. And actually, it mentions that in the Gene Keys when you read about it. Even like, let's say you're waiting for somebody to pick you up, right? You can sit there and like, oh my God, when is this person going to arrive? Or you can be all relaxed and you can choose to meditate or read your favorite book, knowing the person will pick you up when the time is right. And so really patience is about trust. It's about trusting that you are going with the natural patterns of life. And there are ups and downs. And again, with the seasons, every single time we have winter, boom, the spring comes, right? After the leaves fall off the trees and it's just the brown stems on the tree and there's no leaves whatsoever, it looks pretty dull, right? And pretty sad. But then as nature trusts in the natural flow of life, then all of a sudden it starts to blossom, the little green leaves come out, some flowers start to bloom, right? And this is also for us humans, we have natural seasons. And when we start to push ourselves into this forced consistency, I think that's where we have to be very, very careful. That's when we get into too much hustle. That's when we start to burn out, because we think we always need to be on it all the freaking time, right? We always need to perform. We always need to reach out. We need to put another course out there without ever breathing and stopping. And I think that's what causes a lot of stress. And also, I mean, if you look in like big companies and what's in the media, it's always about, okay, we made this profit. It's always about more. So the consistency is here, like we have to increase the profits instead of naturally allowing it sometimes to go up and then it may go down and then it goes up again. I mean, look at the stock market. The stock market is such a beautiful example of the natural patterns in life, because every stock goes up and down and up and down. And then over time, there are all these patterns. And I have been actually taking a course about trading stocks. So I'm still learning it with Erin West. She was here on my podcast and we talked all about patterns. She's so passionate about it. And I think she also has a scaling net chart, but I would have to double check on that. So this is a little bit about this. And now also when we look at the 35, which is now the programming partner, right? So the gate 35 comes off the throat center. So the throat center is about communication and it's a very experimental energy. It's also a Gemini energy. And in the human design, like I said, it's called change. In quantum human design experience, in the Chinese I Ching, is called progress. And like I mentioned, we need change to embrace patterns and even to experience consistency in our life, right? They only coexist. Otherwise, we would be totally stuck in, I think, total boredom where nothing ever changes, right? And the shadow of the 35th gene key, or the gate 35, is called in the gene keys hunger. So this is the state where you're so hungry that something needs to change in your life, right? And obviously, we can fall into this and then kind of create chaos in our lives because we're so bored with everything. We're never satisfied with anything, and we don't have any kind of patience to just be with what is. But obviously, we can also fall into two extremes because we humans, we need change. And like we mentioned with the gate 5 consistency, even patterns and routines, we want to change them up. Sometimes I have a habit of training and running for a marathon, and then I'm okay with that. And now I want to more work out in the gym or go for walks or play tennis. And I personally really like to change things up. And I don't have either gate 35 or gate 5 defined in my chart. I really have learned this energy through others in my life. And then the gift of the 35th gene key is called adventure, which is very much aligned to the quantum human design name experience, I think, right? Where we allow ourselves to have new experiences and new adventures in our life. And when I was reading this gene key, I learned something so profound that I hadn't read before, because the gene keys are a very big book of all the 64 gene keys. And this particular gene key is such a special one because this is the only gene key apparently in our DNA where we can actually influence our lives significantly, because many of the other gene keys is really like we're going with the flow of life. We really surrender to our unique purpose. And I think sometimes we can start to think, well, am I helpless? Can I not influence anything in life? And I have actually asked myself these questions many times, because I go so much with the flow of my life. And yes, we can think then, okay, if I'm only going with the path that is meant for me, how can I even have free will and influence anything, how my life's going to happen, right? So the 35th gene key, and I'm going to read this to you, is actually the only place within all human DNA that human beings have a choice in how their reality is constructed. So we do have a choice. And that is where we have free will. And the 35th gene key is all about, so when it talks about progress, which is, again, Richard Rati used the word from the Chinese I Ching, it says the only progress is love. So in any moment, any decision we make, we can choose fear or we can choose love, right? And so you can very much indeed change the course of your life, the destiny of your life. And everything in the gene keys, actually, when you first start the gene keys, there's something called the pathway of challenge, which is from the life's work to the evolution gene key in your gene key profile. And this challenge, or this pathway of challenge, invites us to check in with our attitude. Because anything, any shadow, any situation in our life, we can see it from a place of being a victim or seeing the gift in that, right? Like right now I was forced to slow down a little bit, and I really checked in with myself. Like, okay, I really had to rest a lot and I wanted to work on all these things and now I couldn't. And either way, I could see this as a bad thing. Or what I did indeed, I was like, okay, there's something here for me to tune into and realign. And I did get some clarity on several things and a new level of confidence in some way. And then also at the same time feeling grateful that I still feel inspired to, have one client call and record a podcast episode. But other than that, I rest for the entire day and I let that be, and I don't force things. And so anything that life throws to us, we have that choice. We can always decide our attitude. Am I being the victim? Is this happening to me? Or can I ask the question of how is this happening for me? And so this is really what this 35th gift is all about, that we can actually do something. We can always choose love. And I mean, there's so many teachings out there. One thing that comes to my mind is Matt Kahn, for example. He is a beautiful, I want to say he's a public speaker, also puts a little bit of humor into it. And he talks always about love, and such a beautiful human. And there's also the Course in Miracles. That is a huge, big book. And this entire book is all about choosing love versus fear. And I think this book is really based on the genetic code of the 35th gene key. So it's this invitation for us to live with an open heart. And from that place, let life show us what wants to be changed and what patterns especially want to be changed. So right now, the earth is in gate 35. So this energy is here that grounds us. The earth energy is always more grounding. So ask yourself, how can I embrace change in my life? How can I choose love instead of fear? Maybe there's something in your life right now where you feel like things are happening to you and you feel a little bit like a victim. And how can you actually see the person or the situation from a place of love? And especially what I have learned, that because in the gene keys always, the shadow is always described in two different ways. So the shadow can be either, it's called repressive or reactive. And so, for example, for the 35th gene key, the repressive nature is called bored, and the reactive nature is called manic. So it's kind of the introverted way and the extroverted way, right? And so the repressive tends to always be, yeah, like more introverted, where it's kind of very shy and very quiet, but in a way like this hunger for more, maybe like, nothing is ever going to change, but I have so much hunger for change, but what's even the point? I'm not going to do anything about it, right? And it's kind of like giving up on life. You're almost scared of all the things you're hungry for, but you don't do anything about it. And then the extroverted or reactive way would be where you fully express this hunger on the outside and you constantly chase new things out of this boredom. You really react on it, right? And oftentimes the reactive side can also express itself in a lot of anger. And I think we have come to a place where we always label people that are angry or more reactive as the bad ones. But this is also all the wounding. You know, I have to say I'm more always in my repressive side, and I have learned through my daughter that she's always more on the reactive side, and it has given me so much more compassion for her, because the way she expresses, I mean, her need to be loved and seen is oftentimes through anger, and she can get actually very pushy, you know, where I would be more like withdrawn. I wouldn't talk to you, and I would internalize it much more. But both sides are totally valid, and both sides of the shadow, they want to be met with love. So how can we meet ourselves with more love, and how can we also respond to other people in our life if they are more on the repressive or on the reactive side of any shadow? How can we meet them with more love? Because that's really how we up-level consciousness in the world. That's how we positively change the direction of our business, how we create more abundance all around us, not only for ourselves, but also for others. But so it's always this invitation to choose love. And I love this, especially as a Fräulein. And I just love that the gene keys provide us this next level of wisdom. And I also love how this has been progressed, right? We first had the Chinese I Ching, then we have human design, then we had quantum human design through Karen Parker's own interpretations. And we have the gene keys as well, right? And the gene keys have also, they really have grown out of the Chinese I Ching and the human design language as well. And so now here am I, and I'm bringing my own twist on all these things, right? Because I have received so much feedback from you guys that you have a little bit hard time of understanding these energies, and it is my mission to make it a little bit easier and to make it more useful and practical in your daily life of what it actually means. And yeah, I even now started to write a little book about it. It's still going to take a while. I have been asked about it several times, and I have to say I'm still resisting it a little bit. So if you want to cheer me on, please do. But I really want to bring all these 64 archetypal energies together in a way that's really simple and easy to understand. I think I've already done this just with the gates, but I find this combination of the gates along with the gene keys the most juiciest, fun, and also enlightening for myself. Literally every time I get a question from people, like either on Instagram or on the Conscious Money Collective, for example, I love to respond, and every time I learn so much, and it's so well received. And yeah, this is also your invitation. If you want to go a little bit deeper with the Gene Keys or your human design, I do offer intuitive readings. I still currently have a holiday special going on. There's still some spots left. And I'm going to drop the link in the show notes. As right now at a discounted rate, you can book your one-on-one session with me. There's also always the invitation to join us in the Conscious Money Collective. That's a beautiful space to work on all things money, human design, gene keys, to have a really loving relationship with money, which I know so many of you are still struggling with. And it's a monthly community, super affordable. And the more you can ask anything in there. And we do monthly live calls about topics regarding, just like I mentioned, money, human design, and gene keys as well. And you get to connect with a community of like-minded people. So it's a super fun place if you want to have a little bit of consistency, right? To keep working on things that you're really passionate about, but at a slow, steady pace, going with the seasons of life, where you can also slow down. So that's kind of the place to be for that. And other than that, I'm always very grateful for your shares. And also, if you want to give me a like or review on the podcast or on YouTube, it's always super appreciated because it helps get my message more out into the world. And I'm sending you much love and light as we're moving into the beautiful month of December. And I'm very delighted and excited to be with you all on the next episode.